truth be told, I was the only one he could afford. It's free. So I must say, it was a little weird walking in this morning. I'm like, had to come through the visitor entrance, sign my name. 12 years, this was my home. 12 and a half years. It was my home, but it was not just a home, it was a family. And I say that honestly about Yankee Candle. Many people have said it, but for me, it was really the truth. So when John called and asked me to come today and do this, I was like, really? That's kind of weird. I'm like, what would I say? What would I talk about? He's like, just tell him your story. I'm like, my story? I'm like, whatever. I'm like, no big deal. Everybody has a story. And, everybody knows my story. No big deal. So he kept talking and talking and talking and talking, and I eventually agreed. So we got off the phone, and here I am today. So my story. So I'll tell you the short version first. The short version is I was born tall, blonde, with big boobs. That's just to make sure you're all paying attention. I was the straight-A cheerleader that dated the captain of the football team. I went on to be a corporate executive. I lived a charmed life. At least that's what my friends told me. Well, at 38, my husband passed away of the deadliest of all brain tumors. Okay? You Google it, that's what it says. At 40, I reconnected with that football captain, and I thought I had my happily ever after. Okay? At 45, I kicked breast cancer's ass. 1 in 8 women do it. I did it last year. So 3 months ago, I had the opportunity and left Yankee Candle, and it's time to figure out what the next chapter was in this, what was starting to feel a little bit like a Lifetime movie. Okay? So that's my story in a nutshell. There it is. No big deal. People have always said to me, though, for years, people have been saying, Deb, you're so strong. How do you do it? And at first I just looked at them and I had like no idea what they were talking about. But really when it all started was back in 2005 when I went to bed one night, just like any other Sunday night, getting ready for work the next day. And at 3:43 in the morning, my phone rang. And that's never good, right? I answered the phone. I'd like to speak with a relative of Gerald Lynch. Well, is this his wife? Yes. Oh, this is Dr. Resnick at the Mass General Emergency Room, and we have your husband here. Oh, what happened? Well, there's apparently been some kind of head trauma. We're still investigating. Okay, well. He's like, I must tell you, he's been intubated. I'm like, oh, it's 3:43 in the morning, but I had to admit, I didn't know what intubated means. I said, well, I don't know what that means. He said, he wasn't breathing on his own, so they had to put in a breathing tube. Oh. More questions. I'm like, well. He's like, why don't you just come here and we'll figure out what's going on and you just come here. Well, I said, I would. I live in Western Mass. I'm like, I live 2 hours from there. You should leave now then. Oh, okay. Hung up the phone, went into the bathroom, brushed my teeth, washed my face, put a comb through my hair, picked up the clothes on the floor of my closet, and off I went down the Mass Pike. 2 days later, he had his first brain surgery. 2 days after that, on our 5th wedding anniversary, the pathology report came back. Malignant glioblastoma, the deadliest of all brain tumors. So we went home and we started fighting. That's what we did. People are like, you're so strong, how do you do it? I'm like, I didn't do anything, I just got out of bed. You told me to come now, I did. We went home, fought. Years later, people kept saying, the story goes on. People keep saying, Deb, now it's like, you're the strongest person I know. And I'm like, really? How do you even respond to that? I'm like, what is an appropriate response? I'm like, okay, thanks, smile, nod. People keep saying it. You're the strongest person I know. You're the strongest person I know. And then finally, I figured it out. I figured out the perfect response because I figured out why. People now say, Deb, you're the strongest person I know. And I say, well, you don't know my parents. There you have it. In a nutshell, I'm strong because I didn't know any different. Okay? So earlier this year, my dad, he's going to turn 80 this year. So earlier this year, he asked me to come down to Florida. So we went down, I had to go down to Florida, and they have this birthday party at their community clubhouse. So think like Del Boca Vista from Seinfeld, you know what I mean? Just exactly like that. Yeah, and so what it was is they have a birthday party for everybody who's turning 80 that year. So He asked me to speak, and I was supposed to speak about, where he went to school, his accomplishments, what he did for work, hobbies, family, all that kind of stuff. And, well, I mean, my dad, he didn't go to college, and he worked in the same factory for 35 years. And plus, who cares about any of that stuff anyways, especially when you're 80? So I started thinking, I'm like, what can I tell them about my dad or about my parents that, would be meaningful? So I started thinking, and I said, okay, let me tell them about the things that they taught me. Not the things that they told me, the things that they showed me. And that's a big difference. And so these are the things that they didn't tell me I needed to know, but I did. Number one, I call them my 4 basic survival skills. Number 1, work hard, really hard. I mean, nose down, work hard. I knew from early on that I was going to college. My parents didn't go to college, but my sister and I, well, we sure as hell were going. We didn't have a lot of money. We were told we were to get good grades, get involved, be leaders, get scholarships, whatever it took, we were going to have to do. They were going to work hard. They worked double time, overtime, union strikes, you name it. They worked hard, so we did too. Their plan worked. Went on to college, studied hard in college, graduated with an accounting degree. Awesome, great. Now the next part was how to work hard to become a CPA. Work hard 4 years to become a CPA. Great, now that I'm a CPA, how am I going to work hard not to be a CPA? Because I am not an accountant. So I spent the next years trying to figure out how to break that mold and learn about the businesses that I was dealing with. So how do you analyze those businesses and really understand what's going on? Then I had to work hard to figure out how did I just not analyze the business, but how do I help to operate those businesses? And then how do you lead those businesses? So that was my path as I went through, but it's all hard work. And it was much like fighting an illness, whether you're the caretaker or you're the patient. It's all just a battle. And what you need is survival skills. Survival skill number 2 was make friends, get involved. My parents were very involved in the community. My dad, he coached Little League baseball for 18 years. He didn't even have a son. And this is what girls didn't really play back then. So, they knew everybody in the community, our neighbors. We were the house where, we had a keg in the basement, and there was a bar, and, there was a lot of beer drinking on Saturday afternoons when everybody's done with the yard work, everyone was over. So we were the house that everybody hung out with. It was like a family around there. So when I was 10 years old, my dad had a stroke, and it was scary. It was right at the dinner table, and when the ambulance pulled away and my mom went with him, we were left with the neighbors, which was fine because they were family. And they took care of us a couple weeks, and all was good because it was family. My Yankee Candle family took care of me while I took care of my husband back 7 years ago. They covered for me when I wasn't here physically. They covered for me when I wasn't here mentally. They fed me. They let me talk about it. They let me not talk about it. They supported me. They did errands. They did everything what they could do. They were friends. So for 16 months, as my husband and I battled through his 3 brain surgeries, multiple infections, brain bleed, blood clots, the whole 9 yards, it was a losing battle for Jerry, but it just wasn't meant to be. For me, though, I survived, and I had to move on, and my Yankee Candle family and friends helped me do that. Survival skills. Number 3, be self-sufficient. I grew up in a house where you just figured out how to do it. If something was broken, you fix it. If it looked broken, you fixed it, and you just crossed your fingers. I've always been self-sufficient. I've always worked. I have my own toolbox. I know how to use it. I've always paid my own way, managed my own finances, done the whole 9 yards. So very proud of my self-sufficient nature. I tell you, I have one moment of weakness when it was about 3 or 4 months after Jerry died, and we had a gym down in our basement in our house, and I decided, okay, well, it's about time I get back down there and start working out. Spring was coming. And I go down there, and he had a big net down there. My husband, he loved to golf. He was an avid golfer, so he had this huge net down there where he'd hit balls into it all winter long. So I go downstairs, and like I said, I hadn't been down there in a while, and I walk down, and I see the net, and it's like, oh, what is that? There was a bird stuck right in the middle of the net, and it was in there good. So apparently it had come in through a chimney, and it was flying around because there was bird poop everywhere, and it went full steam right into the net. And apparently it had been there a while because it was very, very dead. So I'm like, oh crap, I hate birds. Like Carolyn knows, they freak me out. I'm like, gross. So I run upstairs and I call my dad. And I don't know what I was expecting them to do. They live in New Hampshire. And I knew as soon as I called him that was a mistake because I knew exactly what he was going to tell me. After he stopped laughing, he's like, go to the garage, get your work gloves, put them on, go downstairs, pull the bird out of the net, throw it in the trash, and wash your hands. Done. Survival skills. Just be self-sufficient. Just figure it out. Number 4, be strong. Be tough as nails. So the kind of strong that when life throws up a roadblock, you put your head down, you go run right through it, and you come out the other side stronger than you were when you went in. Okay, that's the kind of strong. Now, everybody's got something, right? Everybody's got illnesses in their family and things that have happened. My dad, he was born with a hole in his heart. It's just something he's dealt with his whole life. You would never even know it if you met him, but it's just something he quietly deals with. He had a stroke. He's had a couple open heart surgeries. The man is going to be 80 years old. The doctor, he's outlived his doctors. I mean, he's tough as nails, right? So my mom, she had breast cancer. 20 years ago, she had breast cancer, and that was back when there was no pink ribbons. There was no friend or neighbor next door that had gone through the same thing, and there was certainly no Google. It was big, it was scary, it was unknown. But she fought it, and she survived. And she's 78 years old now, and she is tough as nails. Okay? So back, thanks to my mom, I was been fanatical about getting mammograms since I was 35. And in August of 2012, I got the call back, which, if anybody's ever done it, is dreaded callback. And I knew, I'm like, crap, breast cancer. So went through the process. I had a couple small tumors. It's treatable by drugs over a long course of time. So my treatment schedule was going to be very aggressive. Although my prognosis was great, my treatment schedule sucked. And so what she told me was that I needed about 20 weeks of chemo and 6 weeks of radiation 5 days a week, followed by 9 months of another drug called Herceptin. And then I would take a pill for the next 5, maybe 10 years every day. So I said, okay, great, when can we start? And she's like, okay, we'll start right away. A couple months later, when we got to know each other a little bit better, and she started to figure me out a little bit, she's like, I've never seen that before. She goes, you were coming in here expecting you were just going to get away with some radiation or something, and I laid this huge treatment schedule on you, and you didn't flinch. You didn't bat an eye. Cool as a cucumber. You said, okay, when do we start? She's like, that never happens. I go, she didn't know then I'm tough as nails as well. So those are my survivor skills, as I call them. Okay, they've helped me navigate these roadblocks in my personal life, but they've also helped me advance in my career. Okay, so I went from being a lowly staff auditor to a senior vice president in one of the best consumer brands in the country, not to mention the best fundraising program in the world. Yeah, but really, when I thought about it, it's those same survival skills. I'm not the smartest person in the room. I am not the most intellectual person in the room. I work hard. I made relationships, built relationships over time. I stayed tough, and I did whatever it took to get it done, whatever it was. Survival skills, the same ones. Okay? So that's my story. I am strong. I was built that way. I don't know any different. Okay. When John asked, can you come in and I want to inspire them, and I'm like, well, people these days now, a few years removed from all this, oh, Deb, you're such an inspiration. I'm like, an inspiration. People use that word all the time. It's a good word, and I'm always honored when someone uses it in the same sentence as my name. But I started thinking about it, and I was like, well, what does it actually mean? So I looked it up, and in the dictionary, at least online, it says that it's the act of changing the emotions, changing somebody's intellect or emotions. And I'm like, oh, okay, well, it just means having an impact. So, I mean, that's my story. If I was strong and I was inspirational, that's great. I was just trying to live my life and get through it. I have a great life. I'm very, very happy, and I consider myself one of the luckiest people on the face of the earth. And if somewhere along the line that I've actually made an impact on somebody, well, then that's all the better. So that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.